Well, hello and welcome to our continuing Bible devotional. We're currently looking at the book of Ephesians and we're in chapter 2. And as I shared with you in our last devotional, in the early parts of chapter 2, the Apostle Paul shares three spiritual facts that are true of everyone. In verse 1, we saw that everyone without exception either now is or once was spiritually dead. He continues to lead to spiritual fact number 2 in the next two verses. But for the sake of context, let me read the first three verses of Ephesians chapter 2. And it says this, "And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind." Well, verses 2 and 3 here lead us to the second spiritual fact that is true of everyone. Spiritual fact number 2. Everyone, without exception, now does, or at least once did, follow the sinful ways of Satan, the ways of the world, and the ways of the flesh, which we sometimes call the sinful nature. In verses 2 and 3, the Apostle Paul says that we once walked in a particular way. The word walk in the Bible often refers to a general course or direction of a person's life. In other words, this is how you lived, or at least it's how some people once lived, and most people are still living. And then he says you followed three different things. They're all related, but they are three different things. We followed the course of this world. We followed the prince of the power of air, which is a title for Satan, and we followed the passions of our flesh. And we're going to get back to those those three things in a moment. But first, I want you to notice the description at the end of verse 2, and it says all people were sons of disobedience. Sons of disobedience. What does that mean? Well, it's not just a way of saying that people have disobeyed God. That phrase was used in the ancient Near East to label someone as regularly or habitually that way. They could be a son of obedience or son of disobedience, but what it referred to is their habitual, regular, consistent character, consistent activity. In the same way that if you label somebody a safe driver, that doesn't mean they're a perfect driver, but it means that's their consistent way of driving. On the other hand, if you label them a reckless driver, it doesn't mean they always drive recklessly, but that's the consistent character. That's what they typically do. And the Bible teaches that mankind is typically, not 100% of the time, but typically disobedient, typically acts in rebellion, consistently lives that way with an occasional aberration in which they do the right thing. Now, to express how we do all that, he says we consistently disobey and disregard God until God changes our hearts through the Holy Spirit. And the way we do that is by following the sinful ways of this world, the sinful ways of Satan, and the sinful desires of the flesh. When he says we follow the ways of this world, the course of this world, it means we follow human culture. And even though culture itself is not sinful, the ideas, the values, the thinking of this world typically runs counter and in opposition to God. What this world believes, what the culture believes about sex, about honesty, about marriage, about sanctity of life, about finances, about everything, what the world tends to believe is in opposition to God, and we tend to follow the course of this world. All people also followed, at least one point, all people once followed Satan, and most still do follow Satan. Now, that doesn't mean that people are Satanists or Satan worshipers. It just means they generally follow Satan's plan rather than God's plan, although they often do this unknowingly. They don't even know Satan exists. He hides himself. He masquerades as an angel of light. And third, we follow the passions of the flesh, the desires of the body and the mind. We have an inclination towards sin. That's part of our humanity. We call this the flesh or the sinful nature. And all of us have that pull in our life. Like a car. If you've ever had a car that's out of alignment, it pulls either to the right or to the left, sometimes very hard to the right or hard to the left, and you have to resist that pull. But it's always pulling in the wrong direction, and our flesh is always pulling us away from God in every aspect of our life. And only by the power of the Holy Spirit living in us can we say no to those desires and yes to God. But all of this is true. All of us at one point, and most people still are, those who are not Christians, have followed the ways of this world, the course of this world, Satan, and flesh. And that puts us under the wrath of God, as he talks about here. And that puts us in a bad place. We have a serious problem. We're guilty. God is angry. Judgment day is coming. What do we do? Well, that's what he's going to talk about next, because God has provided a miracle, a way of escape, a way for us to experience his blessings instead of his judgment through Jesus Christ. That's what we'll look at in spiritual fact number 3 in our next devotional. Have a blessed day.